Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are back with the Ratchet & Clank Marathon. This time it's Insomniac Games' last game on the PlayStation 2, Ratchet Deadlocked, or in Europe, Ratchet Gladiator, or in Japan, Ratchet & Clank 4. This game kind of rides the lines in between being a main series game and a spin-off, since Insomniac Games did make it, and it has a storyline that's canon to the series and plays like the other three games, but it has a much higher emphasis on shooting than the first two games. Although to be fair, Up Your Arsenal had a much higher emphasis on shooting as well, so I'll refer to it as main series, and I consider it Ratchet & Clank 4. I played this game a lot when I was a kid. I couldn't tell you how far I got, because I don't remember, but I do remember finding this game very addicting. It was a birthday gift in the year 2008, a whole 3 years after its original release back in 2005. I don't know why I waited so long, but at least I got around to it sooner than Jak X. Speaking of which, this game was released the same year as Jak X and Sly 3, both of which I've done reviews on in the past if you haven't seen them. I won't compare this to Sly 3, but I do think it's interesting to compare this with Jak X, since on the surface, the two games don't have much in common, but there are similarities I will get into later. The game was released to great reviews and 1 million copies sold, but this game wasn't released in the HD collection by Idle Minds in 2012. Also released in that year was that piece of shit Ratchet & Clank Full Frontal Assault on the PS3, but the PS Vita port was delayed, and so to apologize, an HD edition of Ratchet Deadlocked was released on PSN. This is how we're looking at the game. Unfortunately, my PS2 disc won't read, so let's get this out of the way. I often take the piss out of the Sly Cooper HD collection, and I have defended the infamous Ratchet & Clank collection, but Ratchet Deadlocked HD is easily the worst HD remaster of any game I have ever played, with frequent frame skips and other weird one-time anomalies like the main villain's teeth in this scene and Ratchet's face in this part. In-game, there are frequent frame drops, and the list goes on and on. All of these problems are not in the original PS2 edition of Deadlocked. But anyway, I'm going to try to ignore these things for the sake of the video. The story starts with Captain Starshield being annihilated by Ace Hardlight, to which we find out that this is a TV show called Dread Zone, where heroes are captured and forced to fight one another to the death on the VoxBox channel, run by Gleeman Vox in the Shadow Sector. Ratchet, Clank, and Big Al are on board the Starship Phoenix, and Sasha, the new mayor of Metropolis, alerts them of this show, but right then and there, they are all captured, and Ratchet is forced to fight, with Clank providing technical support, and Big Al providing Ratchet with combat bots, Mark and Green, to help in the field. Every contestant is given a shock collar to electrify or blow up any contestant the Vox team is necessary. The show commentators, Dallas, who made a cameo in the PS4 game, and his wife, Juanita, are quick to believe that Ratchet will be wiped out by Ace Hardlight and the Exterminators, but as you play through the game, you prove them wrong by going up in the ranks and conquering bigger and crazier challenges than you could at the beginning. But if you want to avoid spoilers, skip to this point in the video. Dallas and Juanita frequently slander Ratchet, making him look bad. Ace Hardlight reveals that he enjoys killing other heroes. Vox gets more and more angry that he isn't making any money on Ace Hardlight merchandise that they have because audiences like Ratchet more. Ratchet defeats all the Exterminators and becomes the face of Dread Zone, but when trying to mess up the whole thing and free everybody, this is turned into a life or death situation with Ratchet having to save everybody in the audience and the other contestants within the time limit, or else the whole place will blow up. Clank gets everyone out, and Ratchet has one final match against Vox himself, and of course he wins and gets away, ending the game. The story sounds simple, right? But actually, I would say it's just as involved as the last three games. Thing is, do you think it's fun to script out every single thing that happens in a story? No? Well, it isn't. So I figured a summary would do. I mean, hey, it's better than nothing, right? Anyway, I really enjoy this story, since it's very dramatic, and while you know Ratchet and company will make it out alive, the situation they're in is very dangerous, and the game isn't going to hide the fact. But the game still keeps the same level of humor to reduce the tension between levels. In my Ratchet 2 review, I mentioned how immersive it was that Megacorp was a company that monopolized the entire galaxy. In this game, Vox's company is similar, but they aren't in the best financial situation since nobody is buying all the merchandise they put out.
Fans of Dread Zone, I share your pain for the loss of the mighty Ace Hardlight. I encourage you all to express your grief and sympathy by purchasing this limited edition Ace Hardlight Memorial action figure on sale now for only 299 volts.
Which is why the longer the game goes on, the crazier and crazier the events become so they can get more views. It's not as immersive as the Megacorp plot, but I still do find the behind-the-scenes aspects of the company to be interesting. The voice acting is again really good, with James Arnold Taylor again being great as Ratchet and David Kaye is again great as Clank, and the two have firmly established their friendship chemistry in this game, and this allows later games to have more dramatic writing. This game's story is pretty similar to Jak X in the regard that our heroes are forced to do a dangerous and life-threatening sport, and if they don't comply, they will die. Both stories are different enough to be distinct, but I figured I'd mention that. In terms of the gameplay, Ratchet Deadlocked plays just as smoothly as the previous games, with great platforming control, although the platforming is much more difficult since Clank isn't on the field with Ratchet, so we only have to rely on ourselves. However, this is one of the reasons why Ratchet Deadlocked is considered a spin-off by a lot of people. Since Clank isn't in the field, that means no Hydro, Hell-On Thruster Pack, and with that, the game has next to no platforming to begin with, so it's not a particularly bad thing. The only planet I can think of that has a significant amount of platforming is the Asteroid Belt, but this game's level design is about as linear as it gets. This game structurally takes the obstacle course in the arena stages from the previous two games and makes it its own expanded upon game. This concept could get very repetitive by the end, however amazingly, Ratchet Deadlocked never gets repetitive. Most planets you play on have distinct missions like blowing up a statue on planet Torval, or taking an alternate, equally difficult pathway on planet Orxon, changing the directions of the light beams to gain access to the main tower on planet Kronos. Each planet has a main campaign where you play a few missions, and then you can play a few extra missions for dread points, which unlock skins and progress you to the next tournament. Each tournament gives you a few more planets to play. This is similar to Jack X, since in both games you have to earn points to get up to the next tournament. The only difference between this game and that one is that this game never gets repetitive, unlike Jack X, which gets pretty repetitive very quickly. In terms of gadgets, the charge boots are an outright necessity, since without them you have to do a lot of walking that can really kill the pace. The gravity boots allow Ratchet to again walk on metallic walls, although you'll barely use them. The grind boots allow you to grind on rails, and the only weapon you can use are the dual Vipers, which we'll get back to. And the swing shot allows you to grapple from place to place. Combat bots are pretty useless since they don't do much for you in combat with their weak guns, but they are customizable, so that's nice. The more damage they take, the more experience they build, and when the bar is full, you can unleash a screen nuke. For most of the time, it never hits anything, so in general, these two aren't very important. But they do come in handy when shutting off big machinery with an EMP blast, and the hacker they can use to open doors. They can also operate bolt cranks for you, and if that's the case, then might as well just not have them at all. The one that's not doing anything during these activities can create a shield around the one that is doing something so you can focus on the enemies. This game features the third-person mode, which is again most comfortable for me. The first-person mode is great for getting enemies that the auto-aim can't hit, and the lock strafe mode automatically strafes and the R1 button fires your gun. In some missions you can use certain vehicles, my favorite being the fast-moving hover bike, which you can use to chase down targets and go through rings. The truck allows you to do the same thing, only with a cannon on top. The jet obviously allows you to fly and shoot rockets and lasers. The worst and most overused in this game is the Landstalker, a slow-moving, four-legged tank that shoots blasters and charge shots. It's fine when you're in full control, but when it's automated and you can't defend yourself from enemies, all the while having to rank up points, it's extremely frustrating since you can come very close to finishing but fail and have to do it all over again, or blow up right at the finish line, or any stupid bullshit like that. This game has easily the best weapon lineup in the whole series. The B6 Obliterator is a great bomb-type weapon. The Arbiter is one of the best rocket weapons in the series. The Hunter Mine Launcher is a bomb that locks on enemies. The Magma Cannon is a great shotgun with a great rate of fire. The Scorpion Flare is a spike ball that you can mash onto the ground for an insane amount of damage. In the multiplayer, you can spin it around, creating a shield around yourself. In my Ratchet & Clank 2 review, I said the Bouncer was a great weapon to replace the Rhino 2 that does a hell of a lot of damage, but in this game, you get the dual Vipers completely free of charge with an unmatched rate of fire in the series, and it kills the early bosses in no time. The Harbinger is the best Rhino-type weapon in the series, which kills everything in no time. Weapons can be upgraded to level 10 in your first playthrough, and get this, in New Game Plus, you can level your weapons up to level 100. I'm not kidding, and trust me, it does not take long to get to that point, and it is extremely satisfying. Alpha mods have been introduced in the series for the first time, and you can use these in New Game Plus to increase weapon ammo and speed, and etc. Omega mods add certain abilities to your weapons, like making the Hunter Mine Launcher have the same effect as the Bouncer, making the B6 Obliterator and the Arbiter have a napalm attachment, making lava spread around an enemy that hurts other enemies, or a Freeze mod for the dual Vipers, or a Shock mod for the Scorpion Flare, and the list goes on. This game has an online and local multiplayer, which unfortunately I couldn't get any games going since nobody is playing the PSN version of Ratchet Deadlocked in 2016 online. You can also play locally and do all the same stuff you could do in the last game, only this time around I'd say it's much more balanced. There's also a co-op mode where if you have a Jack X save file you can play as Jack, and in the co-op mode you just play through the single player without the combat bots. Skill points are again back, and if you get 20 you can take Ratchet's helmet off, or change the HUD colors, etc. You get them by completing specific tasks like destroying cameras or using the same weapon for X amount of enemies in a row. The bosses are my favorite in this series since they hit hard and have a wide variety of attacks. The early ones like Shell Shock go down easy but have crazy attacks like the rockets he launches. The later ones like the Eviscerator or Ace Hardlight do a lot of damage and take a lot of hits to beat. This game also has a difficulty select. I usually pick the contested difficulty, but I tried the Exterminator difficulty and it was insanely hard with 3 hits equaling your death. The soundtrack is pretty good and enhances the tense atmosphere, but most of the things you hear in the game is gunfire. Graphically, this game supports widescreen and progressive scan, and the HD edition is 720p, but overall this game looks just as good as the previous games, although Ratchet's animation is also the best in the marathon, and even though there is a lot of action on screen, the PS2 version never drops frames, but I can't say the same for the HD edition. Overall, Ratchet Deadlocked is great. I wasn't sure going back to this game, I thought it was kind of boring at first for about a half hour. Once you start leveling up your weapons, it becomes one of the most addicting games in the series. I spent at least an hour and a half playing a day. Never before and never again has the series seen weapons this good, and the storyline and characters are just as great. This is one of my favorite games in the series with so much replay value that this game can keep you entertained for weeks. It's very shallow in the platforming department, but the rest of the game more than makes up for it. So next time we'll be looking at Ratchet & Clank Size Matters for the PS2, the end of the marathon. So with that, I will see you guys then.
What's going on? You said we were coming within range of a space station!
Well, we were, sir. How was I to know it would suddenly explode?
Oh, Janice. It's been so long. Too long. Say you'll never leave me again for that nasty villain, Engelbert.